You're listening to Love Talk Live with the relationship expert, Jaime Bronstein, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hi, welcome to Love Talk Live. Today we have a fascinating show. We're talking to two people that work with divorces. So in person today I have Sarah Intelligator.
Hi.
And on the phone we have Jason Levoy.
Hey, everybody.
And Jason, you are in New York or New Jersey? New Jersey.
I am on the east side.
New York or New Jersey?
Oh, I'm in New Jersey.
New Jersey, thank you.
I can see New York.
Okay, it's all good. So Sarah, before we even begin with what she does, and it has to do with, she's a lawyer, she's a divorce lawyer. Two things. First of all, how we met is I was doing a show, I was interviewing a couple a few months ago, and right after the show, the guy, he looks at his phone and he said, "My phone is blowing up. Dr. Warsh is blowing up my phone. He's trying to pimp out his wife or something."
But he's my pimp, yes.
So he thought that Sarah would be good for the show.
Yep.
And here she is.
Here I am. Yeah.
And do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about what you do first? And then I would love you to tell your story about how you met your husband, Dr. Warsh, as we just talked about him. And then we can just kind of get into the interview.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a holistic divorce and family law attorney in Los Angeles. And basically that I coined the term holistic divorce and family law to describe my style of practice. Basically, I'm a family law attorney. I do divorces, child custody, the routine stuff that a family law attorney does. But when I went out to practice on my own, and I kind of thought, how am I going to set myself apart? What makes me different from all the other attorneys in Los Angeles, all the other family law attorneys? And I thought about it, and I'd been teaching yoga for, I think, like 15 or 16 years. At this point, it's like over 19. And I realized that the style that I had always practiced in was that I had been kind of bridging those two worlds. Like I had been taking care of the human being and honoring the human experience in the divorce process, which I think is something that gets lost because law is essentially it's litigation. You're dealing with a lot of paperwork. You're dealing with money, retainer fees, things like that are really intrinsic to the legal process. And yet divorce is so uniquely different in that you're dealing with human beings who would never in their lives ever step foot in a courtroom or maybe be involved in litigation. And now they're being thrust into this litigation. They might not have the money to afford it. They might not know what they're doing. Their children's lives may be at stake. The future, their financial futures might be at stake. And so to me, it was really important to kind of, obviously fulfill my ethical obligations to zealously, diligently defend my clients, represent them. That goes without saying. But to also kind of take care of the human being in the process and to make sure that that human aspect didn't get lost in the litigation. So that's how I kind of came to holistic divorce and family law, and it's been a lot more fulfilling to me to approach it in that way rather than just to approach it kind of in a sterile legal way that many attorneys unfortunately do, but that's just the nature of practicing law, right? So the way I met my husband, funny story, we were...
Amazing story. Amazing. Just get ready.
As the Stanley Cup, playoffs are in effect right now. It's very pertinent. So we were both at a Kings game in Los Angeles. His dad and his brother were in town. My brother's friends were in town. He and his dad and his brother walked up to the box office the night of the game to buy some tickets. They couldn't even get tickets in the same place sitting together, but they bought them anyway. My brother's friend was in town. He wanted to go to a hockey game. We looked at the prices. He said it was too much. So I did a little more searching. I found some seats. He got some seats way in the back row, my brother and his friends. And my dad and I got some seats a little bit lower. And so Joel's brother had the tickets in his hand, and he handed one to Joel. And Joel knew that his brother was going to give him the worst seat and keep the better one for himself. So he reached back and grabbed one of the tickets from his back hand, that happened to be the ticket in the seat right next to mine. We sat next to each other for the entire first period, didn't talk, didn't communicate whatsoever, and then a fight broke out in the stands in the intermission between the first and second periods. And it's really funny because that's not something typical of hockey. That's like maybe like football or baseball or something like that. But
on the rink.
Right, on the rink, but not in the stands, right? The fans are pretty cool usually, especially Kings fans. So, go Kings, little plug there.
Go Blackhawks.
So everyone stood up and turn around and we look, and I say something like, "Gotta love hockey." And he went to med school in Philly, so he said something like, "Oh, I lived in Philly, so I'm used to this," or something like that. And so we started talking. And I wasn't particularly interested. I'm not even sure if he was particularly interested in me, but he got my number at the end of the game. And
which means he was interested in you.
I guess in hindsight, I guess that's what that means.
Jason's laughing. He's like, I'm a guy.
As a man, I can say he was interested.
Thank you. Even though I have a face for radio, right? So anyway, so that's that's how the story goes. So.
Amazing. That is a meant to be story. I love it. So the message is go to hockey games.
Yes.
Open your mouth.
Support your local team. Yep.
And even if it's not a hockey game, just open your mouth and talk.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to talk. Yeah, of course.
Engage in conversation because you never know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you kind of explained what holistic divorce is. So let's go into why do you think so many relationships fail? So many marriages fail.
Yeah. So I think people get into relationships for the wrong reasons. And there's so many reasons. I mean, one is people are so eager to have companionship that they go on a date, they kind of like the person, they have some chemistry, they think, oh my God, we have so much in common, so they go on a second date. And then they go on another date because, everything's going well, they're getting along. When in reality, they're not looking at the bigger picture and they're looking at the far-reaching issues. It's a very short-sighted kind of thing. Like they're like, okay, we get along really well, so we have so much in common. Great, we should be in a relationship. Instead of, are we asking the questions that will lead us to understand whether this is truly going to be a lasting and meaningful relationship? Fast forward, you've been together 2 years, 3 years, and what do? You don't want to break up because you've been together for so long, or you're so attached to this person that you can't really separate the good from the bad, or you see the bad, but you're so afraid that you might not find someone else or have companionship. That companionship's so powerful, right? So you decide to get married, and your reasons for getting married aren't, wow, this person and I share fundamental values and we share the same types of goals and dreams and we approach our lives in the same way, or we have similar backgrounds, or the things, we have a solid foundation, or the things that truly make for a long-lasting and successful relationship. Their reason is, I'm afraid. And they may not even admit it to themselves, right? So then fear, right. And so when things don't work out, they wonder, they look back and where did things go wrong? Why didn't I see this or whatnot? And usually people do. If they're really honest with themselves, it's just that fear is so much more powerful than absolutely everything else that it kind of takes over. So I think the number one reason, if you're just kind of to sum it up very broadly, is that people just get into the relationship for the wrong reason. Or, and I say women because it is usually women who do that. I want to have the fairy tale wedding. I want to show my friends.
And the kids.
Right, the kids. I need the fairy tale proposal, the storybook proposal that I can tell all my friends about. And then you get to that day and then it's over, and then what now, right? If that's what it's about, then it's really disappointing after that, right?
Yeah, well, it sounds like what you're saying, and I agree, is that people get married because of what's on paper a lot of times.
Yeah.
And then there they are.
Right.
And then they're like, what do we do now?
Yeah, and they're not thinking long term, they're not thinking critically, they're not analyzing what for me is going to make for a meaningful lifelong relationship. They're like, what do I feel right now? And they're just concerned with the right now.
Which is interesting because we talk a lot on the show about being present, and being present is so important. Yet in this venue, in this aspect right here, it is important to think about the future.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
But yet there still is a way to be present.
Yeah.
But it's also being intelligent and just looking inside.
It's about striking a balance, because obviously you can't discount chemistry. Chemistry is an important part of a relationship. If you go on a date and it's completely devoid of flirtation, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, yes, family is important too. Check this.
Right.
That's obviously also not the correct approach.
You're not going to end up at the altar just with that.
Maybe,
some people do.
But, it's about striking that balance between, like, do I feel the chemistry? Am I attracted to this person? But is there something else? Is there more than just that?
Yes. And I agree. A lot of people miss that aspect, miss that part.
Yeah.
So what would you say are the benefits of mediation over litigation?
So mediation, for people who don't know, mediation is a process by which you either meet with a neutral third party or the two parties sit down and talk amongst themselves. It's really any time when you're kind of sitting down to try to work things out and resolve your divorce, as opposed to litigating it, as opposed to going to court and asking the judge to make orders. So the benefit to that is, number one, you take matters into your own hands, right? You don't have some man or woman in a black robe deciding the fate of your children, the fate of your property, things of that nature, right? You get to decide. And, for example, child support in the state of California, at least, is statutory, meaning there's a computer program and the judge plugs in a bunch of numbers and the computer program spits out a number, and that's what's called guideline child support. Now, the court can, in rare circumstances, deviate from that. But if you go to court, almost with certainty, the court is going to order guideline child support. However, parties are allowed to deviate from that by mutual agreement. So let's say, you're both going to agree to provide for your children. You're both going to, agree that you're going to share the cost of their uninsured health care expenses, things like that. But you feel like, okay, well, I don't need you to pay me $1,000 a month in child support because, obviously, if you're able to get it, great. But it's a way of kind of, when you go to court, things get acrimonious. If the judge orders one party to pay child support, then that party's going to be angry with the other party. Is going to feel, or she is going to feel bitter that they have to pay the support order, right? And the best part, especially if you have a child, is that you co-parent, that you're friendly and you have a good, amicable relationship for the benefit of your child or children. And when there's this bitterness and resentment, then it kind of it really ultimately negatively impacts the child or the children. So taking matters into your own hands, not having to sit across the table from your ex in court, and it's super uncomfortable. So just for all those reasons, just try to settle things, try to work things out. Lawyers make less money. You don't spend your kids' college savings on lawyers. It's better for everyone except for the lawyer.
So do you feel like that is kind of what you do? You're kind of a coach, also a lawyer. So you kind of get to the heart and help people tap into their emotions also?
So I wouldn't say that because I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a life coach. I'm none of those things.
But the holistic part of the divorce.
So the holistic part of the divorce is, yes, I'm not on a personal level. I'm not like encouraging people to litigate because I want to take their money. I'm trying to do what's best for my client, which is ethically what we're all supposed to do anyways. I don't think every attorney does that, unfortunately, but that's what we're ethically supposed to do. But the holistic aspect, for example, this is just one of the many modalities that I've used. I've had clients who've been just hysterical in court, things involving their children. They break down crying. A lot of times the other attorney is arguing and she's telling lies. I can't believe she's saying that. And I say, but she doesn't believe that. She's just representing her client, just like I'm representing you. She's a lie. They can't get past that. And it's emotional. It's your children, right? So they break down hysterically sobbing in court, and the judge says, we need to take a recess, go outside. So, I'll go outside and I'll sit there and I'll walk them through a guided meditation. That's where I take my experience as a yoga teacher And
That's awesome.
I say, okay, here's some breathing techniques. When we go back into the courtroom, this is what I want you to visualize. And I bring them from like up here to down here, just through closing their eyes and visualization and breathing techniques. And then they go back into the courtroom and I'm like, I don't want you to listen. I don't want you to open your eyes. I just want you to close your eyes and focus on the breathing techniques that we talked about. And then they get through it. So that's just one of a number of modalities that I use, but that's what I mean by holistic, that it's not just like, okay, we're going to court and I'm trying to take care of the human being in the process.
That is so unique. My question is, it probably doesn't work 100% of the time. I'm just imagining these people that are so heated, they'd probably be like, fuck that. Or, you know, like, screw that.
Yeah. Well,
Especially if they've never taken a yoga class or never have taken a breathing class.
I have to say that for the most part, people who come and seek me out as their attorney are probably doing so because they like what I offer and they are like-minded in that respect. So you have already been working with them. They know your style. Yeah. And you know, obviously I have those clients who are not that at all.
Or maybe like one person in the relationship.
Right. And I'm just like, I know that, and I'm not going to even try to push my breathing techniques on you. I'm going to maybe say, you know, hey, you should slow down on the 10th Red Bull you've just had because I don't want you to have a heart attack. Or, you know, maybe you should, this is a true story, or maybe you should, you know, stop smoking because they start smoking again when, you know, the litigation gets so stressful and things like that. And maybe you should get a good night's sleep and put down the Red Bull.
But I love that these people seek you out because, I mean, we're living in a time where people do want tools to be able to, you know, deal with their emotions, especially when they're heightened.
Yeah. I mean, I try to provide them to the extent I can because I think that getting through litigation, if you're not equipped to deal with it, it's going to break you, it's going to destroy you. And the more you can kind of let things go, sometimes, you know, just cut your losses, let things go. I think that, you know, this is what I tell my clients. I'm like, sometimes you have to fight, and sometimes every moment that passes is a moment of your life you will never, ever get back again. Is it worth wasting that moment that you're never going to get back again on fighting, and for what?
It's not worth it.
Yeah. So sometimes it is, but...
Well, there are just so many couples, and they just stay in their muck. They stay in the I'm mad at you because you hurt me or whatever it is, and that, I believe, is pointless because especially if you're at the point where you're for sure getting divorced, and when you're at court, in court, you're there.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy.
And that's a really good point, actually, because I think probably 99% of the divorce process is people playing out the dysfunctions in their relationship through the litigation process. So
the
like
anger.
If someone was controlling in the relationship, then the other party is trying to gain control through the litigation process. They're trying to like kind of act out their issues, and you have to, it's so impossible when you're in it to step out of that and separate and treat it as a business transaction because it is so emotionally charged and the emotion is so inextricably linked to the issues in the litigation. But at the same time, it's like it's to everyone's benefit to separate those two things because you're going to get on and move on with your life that much faster, and you're going to spend a lot less money doing it if you really just let go and, you know, move on. Yeah,
your job, I mean, so interesting. Must be so, I mean, the stories that you have. So what would you say are, so someone decides that they want to get divorced. What are the first initial steps that they would take?
Yeah, so
call her. Call Jason in New Jersey.
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea to call an attorney, not because, you know, I get paid or anything like that, but because I think the scariest part about getting a divorce is the unknown. It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of what are my rights, things like that. And so just, you know, maybe doing a little research, but that's not always necessarily going to be 100% accurate. But even just speaking with an attorney, I know some attorneys give you know, complimentary consultation. So it's available, it's accessible, but just getting some basic information. I've had so many people call me, we talk on the phone, we have a consultation, whatever it is, and at the end they're like, oh, I feel so much better now. That's always the answer I get at the end, because things, now they understand, and so it's not as intimidating. So I would definitely get as much information as you can, know what your rights are, know what you're entitled to, and take some of the fear out of the process.
I love that. So give her a call. She'll give you her information at the end. So let's see. I'm looking at the time. We're seeing how much time we have for Jason. Let's do like one more question.
Okay.
What are some characteristics that you see among marriages that succeed?
So I deal in marriages that fail, right? So I kind of see what not to do, and by process of elimination, I kind of see what you should do in kind of the opposite. So I think that marriages that succeed are based on two people who share fundamental values, meaning that they, not like, okay, we both love The Cure or something like that, right? That's cool.
Do you love The Cure?
I like The Cure. I wouldn't say I love The Cure, but I like The Cure.
Does your husband?
No, he probably doesn't even know who
Totally
The Cure
random.
are. Yeah. I mean, just that I pulled that out. But your taste in music will change, right? But what is so important to you in your life that it was important to you 10 years ago, it's important to you now, it will be important to you 30 years from now, 40 years from now. Like, for example, like family. That's like, my family's super important to me. I couldn't be with a person whose family was not important to him, or who didn't value family, like really fundamentally value it. And I kind of had to ascertain whether that was true when I was dating my husband, for example, before I would even go on, right? That was like something super important. Or other fundamental values, for example, if you're religious, if you're spiritual, doesn't have to be religious, just spiritual. And these are things that are super important. They've always been important to you. Those are some things that, you need to kind of define for yourself rather than going into it blindly. So people who share fundamental values, and then people who share a solid foundation in their relationship. Like foundation, I think of foundation as like trust, honesty, communication, respect, like things that, like, without this base to your relationship, the relationship would just crumble. It can't exist. So I think those are probably the two most important things that I see in relationships that are successful, is that the people really have this solid foundation, that communicate well, they trust each other, they have this honesty, they're teammates. That's one of the biggest thing, is like, you play for the same team. Your teammate, one of my favorite analogies, because I'm going to go back to hockey for 1 second, is in hockey, when a player scores a goal, the player who passes the puck to the player who scores the goal, it's called the assist. And when the announcer says, oh, so-and-so just scored the goal, and then they acknowledge the person who made the assist. And when you're on a team, one person makes the assist and one person scores the goal. But ultimately, the team gets the point. It doesn't matter who does it, but you have to help each other to get there. And so I'm a big believer in high fives. I think, teamwork is super important. Marriage is a partnership. It's not just this, oh, we have so much in common. Oh, like we have so much fun together. Oh, the sex is so great. Those things are important, but it's more than that. And
yeah, it's working together. It's growing together.
Yeah.
Not individually.
Right.
Together.
Right.
And this is making me think that you and your husband should come on my show.
Yeah, we would
sometime,
love that.
and I will interview you guys like the Schneiders.
In the hot seat.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Let's move on to Jason. Still there, Jason?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I really did want to kind of chime in so many times, but I wanted to be respectful, so I didn't.
Oh,
but
you.
I loved everything, and I agree with everything Sarah said. And if she comes on the show again, then Jamie, I think you need to start a fight to make it rekindle that whole relationship.
Yes, I will do that.
Thanks, Jason.
I'm a full disclaimer, I'm a Rangers fan.
Oh, well.
So maybe you should come to LA
okay.
and you guys can get in a fight.
Sorry about 2014, but not sorry.
It happened.
So, Jason.
94 was a good year.
Oh, we can still talk. We
just talk about hockey.
For the rest of the time. Any hockey fans out there? Let's talk about love. Okay, so Jason.
Yes.
Tell us about your story, what you do, what you did, why you do what you do.
Oh, well, okay, I'll give you the short version of it all. I went to law school actually with the intention of becoming a divorce attorney, as crazy as that sounds. And people told me it was crazy at the time I was doing it, and I had no idea why they would say such things. But I really wanted to do it because I wanted to actually really help people and see the effect of helping them, kind of firsthand, on their faces when the divorce was finalized, as opposed to working for a big corporation and, just dealing with money all day and numbers and all that stuff. I just wasn't into that. So that's why I decided to become an attorney. Then after practicing divorce law exclusively for a number of years, I realized a number of things, but number one was that I wasn't helping in the way I originally envisioned I was going to do it. And, I just felt conflicted, because here I am in the area that I wanted to be, but I didn't feel like I was being effective. I was pretty much handling litigated files, which, if everybody doesn't know, just means you go into court and you're fighting about things through the courts. I mean, I did do mediation and alternate forms of resolving disputes, but the main bulk of what I was doing was contested divorces, and I just didn't like it anymore. And I couldn't envision myself doing it for, the next 30 years or whatever my career would be. I saw what would happen to divorce attorneys who would practicing that long, and I'll just tell you, it wasn't a pretty picture. And a lot of times, unfortunately, I felt like I was kind of litigating my adversary's personal divorce on top of whatever the case was about. And so one day, I remember it like it was yesterday, I was in my office and I was talking with another attorney on a case. We were dealing with a parenting time issue, and we were literally arguing and spending hours, not 20 minutes, hours, over who was going to pick up a child on Saturday morning. And it was an hour difference, 11 o'clock versus 12 o'clock, something like that. And, imagine what our hourly rates are. And like I said, hours spending on this one little, what I would have considered a trivial issue, but it wasn't to everybody else. And so that was the moment that will stick into my mind forever, that I literally hung up the phone after that conversation and put my hands up in the air, and I said, all right, that's it. I said, I can't do this. There has to be a better way. And so I quit. I quit being a divorce attorney. And that's when I started doing divorce coaching, which, Jamie, as you know, not many people are doing. There's a lot of divorce coaches, people who call themselves divorce coaches out there, but they're not attorneys doing it, people who practice divorce law. So that's what differentiates me from the other divorce coaches out there. But I have to say I enjoy doing it so much more because I feel like my reach is so much more. I mean, I work with people nationally, not just in New Jersey, and as a coach, it's so much more fulfilling because I really am helping people. And the original idea was because I saw people who were getting divorced who didn't have attorneys, and that was a catalyst. I'd go to court, and half the courtroom would be full of people representing themselves. We call them pro ses. And, they just look like deer in headlights. And then, if they got a grumpy judge, or the judge was yelling at the person, dealing with the case in front of them, when their name was called, they'd be walking up like with a sheep with their tail between their legs. And I don't blame them. So that was the catalyst for becoming a divorce coach, was to help people who couldn't afford or who didn't have an attorney originally. But as it turns out, it's kind of funny because I work with a lot of people who have attorneys too. So it's just the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I love that you're doing this.
I don't even know what a divorce coach is. What is a divorce coach?
The divorce coach is Jason Levoy.
Yeah. But yeah, I've never even heard of that.
I made it up.
Oh.
And I want to mention that Jason...
No, really, I kind of did.
I love it.
And Jason has a podcast. I was honored to be a guest on his podcast. It's the Divorce Resource Guy podcast. And that's your brand, the Divorce Resource Guy, right?
It is, yeah.
And I know that it's an amazing podcast and it's helping so many people. I really just love how you've taken, you've put your heart into this job. And I know that so many people have benefited and are going to continue to benefit from your work. So thank you, Jason.
Oh, well, no, thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. It is. I've been doing this now, the coaching, for, I'd say 2 to 3 years. And I've already, I feel and I see the results and the empowerment that I provide to people doing it, and that's how I know it's right. You ever hear the saying, you know when you know?
Yes.
It's just,
yes.
So I know. So it's just a matter of kind of spreading the word. And Sarah, you're right. Like divorce coaches, when I first quit, and I said, okay, I think I'll be a coach, there was no such thing. Or you have a lot of people out there calling themselves coaches, but they're really focusing on different aspects of divorce, like the emotional side of it, and it's more therapy oriented.
Right.
And so what I'm doing is definitely is unique in the sense that I'm coaching people from an attorney's point of view, because I am one and I did it. And so I coach them, but I don't give them legal advice.
Right.
And it's a fine line I walk, but I'm coaching them on like the process. I'm helping them reduce the overwhelm that they have about everything.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
If they're representing
how you get around the legal advice hurdle, but yeah, that makes sense.
And I was actually going to ask you.
I constantly have to tell them,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what is the most challenging part of your job? Seems like that could be challenging at times.
That actually is probably the most challenging, is walking that line of not giving quote legal advice unquote, because I work with people all over the country. And so I'm constantly saying, whatever I am telling you, you have to confirm what the law is in your state.
Yeah.
That's definitely a big part of it. But what I focus on also is not the state law specific issues. Like I'm not really coaching or helping with, how much alimony you're entitled to in your specific case. Or the child support guidelines in your case. In New Jersey, we do it too via formulas. All you plug in numbers and the computer pretty much spits it out. But I'm focusing more on the overall general picture of process, your mental state, your emotional state, obviously, but giving you the knowledge, even from the basics, what we would consider the basics about, how does the divorce process work? What are the stages? What types of evidence do you need to support what you're trying to achieve? You can't just walk into court and expect the judge to listen to you, And so, what kind of documents do you need to prepare? If you have an attorney, how can I help them? If you don't have an attorney and you want an attorney, I help them choose the right attorney, or what I feel would be the right attorney, So if somebody is looking to get an amicable divorce or go through mediation, then you don't really want, a really high-powered litigator. So choosing the right attorney is half the battle.
Totally.
And so I help with that. And then once you have an attorney, people like to use me as a second opinion. I work in conjunction with a team. I'm part of the team. So I'm not a substitute for an attorney, and I never suggest that I am. But as a coach, I like to consider myself part of your divorce team.
And I love that you can help people decipher what type of attorney they want. Do they want a Sarah? Do they want someone who's, someone who aligns with their personality, I guess? So that's really cool, because you're going to be working with this person a lot. Right?
Yeah. You have to trust whoever
I can't tell you how many people tell me that in addition to all the stress and drama they're dealing with their spouse and the divorce, which is, hey, it's more than enough for anybody, right? They're also having difficulties with their attorney.
Yeah.
And that's the last relationship that you need to be having trouble with.
All
right?
the time. All the time.
Yeah.
I can understand, yeah.
So many people have switched to me because of that. I mean, I hear it all the time.
Attorneys are humans with personalities.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I love what both of you are doing. It's just, thank you for both of you guys. So can you tell us what would you say is an amazing success story? One of your favorite stories of a couple that came to you, or you were working with the individual and they were just distraught, but then everything ended up being amazing.
Yeah, well,
because it always does end up being amazing.
What's that?
Ultimately, I always say, like, everybody's going to be okay.
Yes.
I think everything is meant to be. Like, when you're in it, it's difficult.
Yes.
But there's a reason it didn't work, so let's move on, and eventually everybody's going to be happy. But anyhow, tell us.
No, that's all we want, right? To be happy.
Yeah.
Is that too much to ask?
No. We want love and to be happy.
No. Right. Life, I always tell people, I say, we hear the phrase, life is short. But if you're in a toxic marriage or with the wrong person, life can be really long.
That's so true.
Yeah.
You don't want. I always say that you don't want to be surviving in a relationship. You want to be thriving. So we're all saying the same thing. Yes. So
Yeah.
tell us, without names, obviously. Don't be like Susie and Jerry
I'll call
from
him
Medford.
So one of my favorite stories to tell is one of the first people that I was actually able to help as, in my coaching capacity. And it's funny because I met him at a totally non-divorce related function. I don't even remember what the function was, but it had nothing to do with divorce, marriage, relationships, nothing like that. But I started talking to him, and then, through the small talk, he found out what I did. And I told him I was a divorce coach, and like most people, he's like, well, what's that? And so I explained it to him. And then as I was explaining it to him, and as I told him that, I also was an attorney and practiced divorce law as an attorney previously, you could see his eyes like kind of get really big. And I couldn't tell if he was getting excited or what was going on, but like he was really, really into it. And so then he began to tell me and share his story, which was kind of sad, and it was a custody issue. He had been divorced already, but he hadn't seen his son for, it was over a year. And his son was, I want to say, like the 9 to 10 range, young, but not really a full teenager yet. And so he was telling me this story, and, for a number of reasons, he just was not able to see his son. He didn't have joint custody. He didn't have any parenting time arrangement set up by the court or anybody, and he was struggling with it. And so I asked him some questions, and got a little more information about what happened. And then, as we're talking more, I could really sense the sincerity in him, and he started to tear up a little, and I totally understand that. And so I just totally felt for him. And so all I did, and this is really the catalyst for, getting me to where I am now and beyond, is I said, you know what? I said, give me your email. Let me go back. I'm going to look up a few things, and I'll shoot you some information. That's it. No, come in, hire me for none of that. Just, I just wanted to help him in any way I could. So I did that. I happened to have some information about the specific issue that he was dealing with, and this was all in New Jersey, so I can do that. And so I emailed him. I emailed him a couple of articles. I think I emailed him a case. In legal land, we call it case law, which can be effective when you go to court, because courts and judges abide prior cases and the law that they set. So I found a case that I thought would help him. And what I do now, I just gave him some information on, he was going to go back to court. He was going to file a motion to try to get some parenting time with his son. And so I just told him some things, really basic, but not for him, that he should present to the court, and things that he should focus on when he makes that presentation. And that was it. I shot him one email, and I thought I'd never hear from him again. Needless to say, I'd say about less than 2 months later, he emails me back out of the blue, and it must have been like 2 pages long, but like the first paragraph was, Jason, you're not going to believe what just happened. I can't thank you enough. So of course I read on. And basically he went to court on his own. He filed the motion on his own, prepared everything on his own,
Oh my God.
and was able to get supervised parenting time with his son to begin,
Wow.
which from where he was really a huge kind of breakthrough.
Yeah.
And so now, today, we still keep in touch. He has unsupervised parenting time and on a regular schedule with his son, and things couldn't be better. So,
Wow.
like, that's the reason I got into it in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, you
High five.
you saved his life. It was meant to
Yeah.
be that you met him. That's amazing.
And his son's life. I
Right.
mean, it's the child.
yeah.
Child,
Right.
at least in California, the child has a right to have a relationship with the parents. It's not the parents' right; it's the child's right. And I think that children, they oftentimes get so trapped in the middle, and that's such a wonderful thing, not just for this man, but for his child, for his son.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good work.
And I didn't even, and the best part is I didn't even do that much, at least in my mind, right? I mean, I shot him, I shot him a case.
Right.
I said, read this case.
But you
and
didn't
that
even.
kind of outlines the law.
Yeah,
You
and-
didn't even have to email
and
him
you have
though.
to-
You didn't have to do
Yeah.
any of that. You did a lot. You're a good man.
Well, thank you. I try.
So really fast, because we're almost out of time. I'm just curious, how did you get the idea to do a podcast? And just if you want to tell people a little bit about it, so that they can tune in.
No, absolutely. The podcast is one of my newer ventures, if you want to call it that, as part of the whole coaching thing that I'm doing. I started it because I was listening to podcasts, like other podcasts, like entrepreneur podcasts, and just the whole podcast, field is growing so big. So I had my own list of podcasts that I would listen to myself, in the car, whenever. And then it occurred to me that I'm like, wow, is anybody doing podcasts on divorce? And so I did a quick search, and there really weren't. I mean, there were a few, but there really aren't that many. And so I said, wow, maybe this could work, because I was writing a lot of articles for different, websites and things like that, different publications. And I always enjoy writing, and I still do, but I was kind of getting a little tired of it. And I love the whole podcasting medium, and talking and interviewing and doing that whole thing. That really gives me enjoyment. So I said, why can't I start a podcast about what I do as a divorce coach, but just do it in the form of a podcast, and I can have on guests like you and other experts, and even have people on if they want to share and tell their stories, because I think people would resonate with that. And it's more than just reading an article, on a page. And so I started that last year in the fall, and it comes out. I do everything myself. I produce the whole thing myself, and I'm doing 2 shows a month now, every other Tuesday, and it's great. I'm having so much fun, and I'm getting so much positive feedback from everybody that they really are enjoying it. And so it's going to keep me going, and hopefully it can just continue to grow. But the whole idea just stemmed from the fact that I was looking for some other way to convey all this information that I want to convey, and have a little fun doing it too.
That's awesome.
Well, you are an amazing interviewer. Like, he's up there with Oprah. I'm not kidding. The questions just flowed out of him.
Go on.
I'm not even kidding. It was so natural. I loved doing it. So just congratulations on your podcast.
No, thank you so much. I had so much fun interviewing you.
And I had so much fun doing it. So, and if you're ever in LA, like I said, you can be on camera on my show. Okay, so we got to wrap up. So, Jason, people can find you how?
People can find me, just go to my website, just my name, jasonlevoy.com, Levoy. And everything, my podcast, I have a private Facebook group, all my resources are available from there.
Awesome. Sarah?
You can find me on my website, which is lafamilylawpractice.com, and you can find my email address, phone number, address, link to my blog, all my social media, everything's on there. So check out lafamilylawpractice.com.
Perfect. And if you need to reach out to me, if you have questions, anything, my website is www.therelationshipexpert.com, or you can email me at Jaime, Jaime, at therelationshipexpert.com. So thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a great show. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
It was
guys.
fun.
And have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
You're listening to Love Talk Live with the relationship expert, Jaime Bronstein, only on LA Talk Radio.